Heading: Communication. Definition: communication is the process of exchanging information, ideas, thoughts, and feelings between individuals or groups to achieve mutual understanding. First point: communication helps people share information and coordinate their activities. Second point: effective communication is essential for achieving organizational goals. Heading: importance of organizational communication. Side heading: improves coordination. First point: communication helps different departments and employees coordinate their activities. Second point: proper coordination improves efficiency and teamwork. Side heading: facilitates decision-making. First point: communication provides necessary information for making effective decisions. Second point: accurate information helps managers choose better alternatives. Side heading: increases employee motivation. First point: communication helps employees understand organizational goals and expectations. Second point: feedback and recognition motivate employees to perform better. Side heading: reduces conflicts. First point: open communication helps clarify misunderstandings and differences. Second point: it improves relationships among employees. Side heading: improves productivity. First point: clear instructions help employees perform tasks effectively. Second point: better communication reduces errors and improves work quality. Side heading: builds trust. First point: transparent communication creates confidence between employees and management. Second point: trust improves cooperation and commitment. Side heading: supports organizational change. First point: communication helps employees understand the need for change. Second point: it reduces resistance and supports successful change implementation. Heading: communication process. Definition: communication process is the series of steps through which information is transmitted from a sender to a receiver and understood. Side heading: sender. First point: the sender is the person who initiates the communication. Second point: the sender develops and sends the message. Side heading: encoding. First point: encoding is the process of converting ideas into words, symbols, or gestures. Second point: effective encoding helps the receiver understand the message correctly. Side heading: message. First point: the message is the information, idea, or thought being communicated. Second point: it can be in the form of written, verbal, or nonverbal communication. Side heading: channel. First point. The channel is the medium through which the message is transmitted. Second point. Examples include email, meetings, phone calls, and written documents. Side heading. Receiver. First point. The receiver is the person or group who receives the message. Second point. The receiver interprets and understands the information. Side heading. Decoding. First point. Decoding is the process of interpreting the received message. Second point. Correct decoding ensures proper understanding. Side heading. Feedback. First point. Feedback is the response given by the receiver to the sender. Second point. It confirms whether the message was understood correctly. Side heading. Noise. First point. Noise refers to any barrier that disturbs communication. Second point. Examples include poor network, misunderstanding, and distractions. Heading. Elements in communication process. Side heading. Sender. First point. The sender creates and communicates the message. Second point. The effectiveness of communication depends on the sender's clarity. Side heading. Message. First point. The message contains the information or idea to be shared. Second point. It should be clear, accurate, and meaningful. Side heading. Encoding. First point. Encoding converts thoughts into understandable symbols or words. Second point. Proper encoding reduces confusion. Side heading. Communication channel. First point. The channel is the method used to transfer the message. Second point. Choosing the right channel improves communication effectiveness. Side heading. Receiver. First point. The receiver receives and interprets the message. Second point. Understanding depends on the receiver's knowledge and perception. Side heading. Feedback. First point. Feedback indicates the receiver's response to the message. Second point. It helps improve future communication. Side heading. Noise. First point. Noise creates barriers in the communication process. Second point. Reducing noise improves message accuracy. Heading. Communication flow in organization. Side heading. Downward communication. First point. Downward communication flows from higher-level managers to lower-level employees. Second point. It includes instructions, policies, rules, and performance feedback. Side heading. Upward communication. First point. Upward communication flows from employees to managers. Second point. It includes suggestions, feedback, reports, and employee concerns. Side heading. Horizontal communication. First point. Horizontal communication occurs between employees or departments at the same level. Second point. It improves coordination and cooperation among departments. Side heading. Diagonal communication. First point. Diagonal communication occurs between employees at different levels and departments. Second point. It improves quick information sharing across the organization. Side heading. Formal communication. First point. Formal communication follows official channels and organizational structure. Second point. Examples include reports, meetings, and official notices. Side heading. Informal communication. First point. Informal communication occurs through unofficial relationships among employees. Second point. It helps build social connections and quick information exchange. Heading. Media of organizational communication. Side heading. Oral communication. First point. Oral communication involves the exchange of information through spoken words. Second point. Examples include meetings, interviews, discussions, presentations, and telephone conversations. Third point. It allows quick feedback and immediate clarification. Side heading. Written communication. First point. Written communication involves sharing information through written forms. Second point. Examples include emails, reports, letters, notices, and manuals. Third point. It provides a permanent record of communication. Side heading. Visual communication. First point. Visual communication uses images, symbols, charts, graphs, and diagrams to convey information. Second point. It helps present complex information in an easier way. Third point. Examples include presentations, posters, and dashboards. Side heading. Nonverbal communication. First point. Nonverbal communication involves communication without using words. Second point. It includes facial expressions, gestures, body language, eye contact, and posture. Third point. It helps express emotions and attitudes. Heading. Problems in organizational communication. Side heading. Lack of clarity. First point. Unclear messages may create confusion among employees. Second point. Poorly explained instructions can lead to mistakes and reduced performance. Side heading. Information overload. First point. Excessive information can make it difficult for employees to identify important messages. Second point. Too much information reduces communication effectiveness. Side heading. Poor listening. First point. Lack of attention while receiving messages can cause misunderstanding. Second point. Effective communication requires active listening. Side heading. Communication barriers. First point. Physical, language, and psychological barriers can interrupt communication. Second point. These barriers prevent accurate understanding of messages. Side heading. Lack of feedback. First point. Without feedback, the sender cannot know whether the message was understood. Second point. Absence of feedback reduces communication effectiveness. Side heading. Status differences. First point. Differences in organizational hierarchy may prevent employees from freely sharing information. Second point. Employees may hesitate to communicate openly with higher authorities. Side heading. Poor communication channels. First point. Using inappropriate communication methods can create delays and confusion. Second point. Selecting the correct channel improves message delivery. Side heading. Cultural differences. First point. Differences in language, values, and beliefs can affect understanding. Second point. Cultural awareness is necessary for effective communication. Heading. Steps towards effective communication. Side heading. Clarify the purpose of communication. First point. The sender should clearly understand the purpose before sending a message. Second point. Clear objectives help deliver meaningful information. Side heading. Use simple and clear language. First point. Messages should be easy to understand and free from unnecessary complexity. Second point. Simple language reduces misunderstanding. Side heading. Choose the right communication channel. First point. The sender should select an appropriate medium based on the message. Second point. The right channel improves speed and accuracy. Side heading. Encourage feedback. First point. Feedback helps confirm whether the message was understood correctly. Second point. It improves future communication. Side heading. Practice active listening. First point. Receivers should pay attention and understand the complete message. Second point. Active listening reduces errors and conflicts. Side heading. Maintain openness and transparency. First point. Organizations should encourage honest and open communication. Second point. Transparency builds trust among employees. Side heading. Reduce communication barriers. First point. Organizations should identify and remove barriers affecting communication. Second point. Reducing barriers improves the flow of information. Side heading: Provide communication training. First point: employees should be trained in effective communication skills. Second point: training improves confidence and communication quality.